Hello, welcome to the Sketching Sisters, it's Emma here. Today I'm going to be sketching these goldfish that Nikki's picked for our latest challenge on Instagram in the Draw This in Your Own style. So first of all I painted a watercolour background and let that dry, and then I got my dip pen and drew the outlines of the fish with some Indian ink so that I could continue with different media over the top without it smudging or running. So yeah, this was just fairly straightforward, just kind of like looking at the main shapes and trying to get them down. It's quite nice because they're underwater, you've kind of got a little bit of leeway for not getting things perfect. And plus I can build it up over the top after as well. It's just a case of, you know, trying to get some of the information down. Just putting in the water lilies here and trying to figure out how to show the reflections that are in the water as well from the reeds that must be in the background. So yeah, I thought I'd go ahead and get these in at this stage. Then I'm moving on down to these other fish at the bottom. I'm quite impressed that I managed to leave enough space for it all, to be honest with you. I usually mess that up entirely, but yeah, I mean, they're not in exactly the right places, but you get the overall effect. Just carrying on putting a little bit more detail in for the plants and things going on in the water. It's actually quite difficult to tell what's poking out of the water and what's reflection, so I'm just going for it really with the pen and hoping for the best.
So I'm having a bit of a day today. We've had a power cut and I'm not having very much luck filming my sketch for this week's Draw This in Your Style challenge. Anyway, I thought I was recording this when I drew it, but I then went to press stop and realised I hadn't. So I'm just going to talk through what I did here. So a really, really cool image from Nikki, I think, this week. Quite a challenge with the fish in the water and the reflections and everything that's going on. But such a lovely scene that I was quite excited to draw it. So what I did first of all was basically do a quick watercolour wash for the water. And I think I used indigo, and what I like to try and do is add in a few different colours just to make it varied and not all the same colour. So I think there was some bit of green, spring, I can't remember what green, it doesn't really matter. I've got a lot of greens in this palette, so it was, so yeah, my indigo, and then some of these I just sort of mixed in, and I also picked up whatever was on my palette already. So that just created the background wash. And then once that was dry, I took my dip pen and some Winsor & Newton Indian ink, and I made a sketch of the fish and the lily pads, and made a start on trying to kind of show these reflections of these reeds or whatever the water plants are that are poking out. And I came back in with my Neo colours to create some colour for these goldfish. So I have a bit of a little pencil case of them here. So I think I just used, I don't have an orange in this selection, so I was using, this isn't actually white, this is silver grey, which I used for the highlights, and this white fish here, and in this ripple from the fishtail that's creating a ripple in the water there. And I think I love this colour. This is Chinese green, and it just makes a really vibrant green. So I sort of popped a few of those bits in for the greenery, and I can't remember which red I used, but there is a red in here. I think it's this one. It's sort of an orangey red. Let me find it. This red, which is, I think it might be carmine. Cadmium, yeah, just light cadmium red. So those are my goldfish colours, and I think I used a bit of watercolour in purple for, I'm not sure what colour purple it is actually. Let me check my reference sheet here. It is, can't read that, something violet, a violet in my watercolour palette, because there was quite a purple hue on the lily pads in the reference image, so I thought that would be cool. And that's what I did basically. So I just sort of added the neo colours, yeah, to create the colour for the goldfish. And I also used a darker, this one, I think it's Payne's Grey. Yes, Payne's Grey, just to kind of create some darker shadow areas around the place, and also to sort of get in here to sort of make the white pop a little bit more. Overall, I was quite pleased with that. I definitely think putting the dark background in first was more effective than trying to paint the goldfish first and then paint around the fish, because that would have looked quite obvious. And I like the fact that the brush is overlapped in places and broken up in places, so it adds a bit of interest. The only thing I would say is that the goldfish are not quite as vibrant as I'd like. I'm not quite sure how I could have done that better. Maybe I could have used my Posca pens, or maybe some gouache. But in a way, I'm kind of quite like that they're a bit muted, because it does make them look like they're underwater. So anyway, overall, I actually really enjoyed that. It's tackling a subject that I don't think I've ever really sketched fish before. So a really nice subject to tackle, and I think I'm going to have a lot of fun this week sketching from some of the other reference photos that Nikki has posted on our Substack. So thanks for that, Nikki. That was fun.
I start off spritzing the paper with water and then adding some waterproof ink onto the page, letting that dry, and then I've got a nice background to work with. I'm now using charcoal to loosely sketch in the 3 fish that I've chosen to concentrate on, the bottom left of the reference picture. I mixed up a bit of red and yellow gouache, and I'm now adding that onto the fish. I quite like the way some of the blue from the background's coming through to add a bit of texture and shading. I'm now using my yellow Posca pen to add a bit more depth and highlights with some neo colour as well. A bit more red there for some depth in the shadows. I'm now using some more charcoal to add more shadow. It's nice that you can just sort of blend it in. I'm now going over the fish and putting a bit of detail in, using my permanent ink pen. I'm now using my parallel pen, which has got a thicker nib, just to add a bit more shadow and depth. Back with my uni pin, I think it's a 0.1. I've now got my white jelly roll pen, just to add a few highlights and some details, a little bit of scales. I'm not going into too much detail, but just trying to make the fish a little bit more textured, I suppose. Now I've got my Derwent Graphitint watercolour pencil, just trying to get a little bit of depth into the water. I've added some of the upright plants, and now I'm adding the shadows in to the sort of reflection on the water using watercolour paint. I think it's sap green and indigo. I'm now adding the ripple in that you can see over the fish, using watercolour again. I think it's indigo I used, and now blending in the reflections that I'd done, because they wouldn't actually be straight across the ripple, so just trying to blend those in a bit with the ripple. Let that dry, and then adding a few more darker tones to the water, just to add a little bit of variation to the water, lights and darks and shades. I'm now going in with my jelly roll pen again, just to add the highlights of the ripples and the plants. and a few across the water, just to add some highlights. And now I'm using the indigo watercolour again with fairly dry brush, just to add a few a bit of movement in the water. I know there's not actually that much movement in the picture, but it just helps. And then that's the final piece, which I'm fairly pleased with. I think the fish are a little bit overworked maybe, but overall I'm pretty pleased with the result.